He thought he was hiring harmless fun clown to make balloons and silly faces at his daughter's birthday party. But when the woman stepped out of the car, something about her sent a chill through the air. She wasn't on the guest list, and she definitely wasn't who she claimed to be. What began as a celebration quickly turned into something no one saw coming. The Archer estate sparkled in gold and white. Banners fluttered in the wind above the gate. Balloons floated in neat clusters, and a string quartet played soft music near the edge of the lawn. This wasn't just a birthday party. It was a statement, a show of wealth, elegance, and perfect planning. Inside the grand hall, waiters in white gloves carried trays of food through guests in custom suits and evening gowns. Laughter mixed with the clink of champagne glasses. Everything sparkled. Everything was on display except for her. Emily Archer, 6 years old, sat alone on the edge of a velvet couch, hugging a stuffed bunny with floppy ears. Her blue party dress looked untouched, her face blank, her eyes distant. She was just there, silent. No cake or crown could bring a smile. No camera flashes could get her to pose. She was just there, silent, invisible, in the room designed just for her. Vanessa Quinn, Ryan Archer's beautiful and always calm fiancée, stepped up behind him and lightly touched his arm. She needs to learn how to perform, she whispered, her voice smooth as silk. Smiling is a skill, and she needs it if she wants to grow up in our world. Ryan didn't say anything for a moment. His eyes stayed fixed on Emily. She isn't ready yet, he murmured. It's only been a year. Vanessa tilted her head, her diamond earrings catching the chandelier light. Grief is one thing, but this has gone on too long. Ryan turned away, his jaw clenched. Just get through today. Just then, a flustered woman approached the gate, dragging a suitcase full of colorful props and wearing a faded rainbow wig. Callie Bloom was late. Her bike chain had snapped 3 blocks away, and she had to run the rest in shoes 2 sizes too big. The guard stepped up to her. "Are you lost?" Callie gasped, "No. I'm the clown hired for the party." Callie was a mess. She held up her printed confirmation, slightly crumpled from her notes. The guard looked at her with clear skepticism. At that moment, Vanessa rushed toward them with a sharp gaze. "Is this the clown?" she asked the guard, then turned to Callie with her eyebrows raised. "There were some delays, but I'm here to give Emily a birthday she'll never forget." Vanessa crossed her arms. "Don't make things worse." Callie nodded slightly and stepped inside, feeling the weight of everyone's stares as she walked by. But she only had eyes for one person. Emily. The little girl looked up as Callie approached. Callie knelt down beside her, pulling out a sock puppet and slipping it onto her hand. "Hello," she said, waving the puppet in a silly voice. "I'm Benny. I hear you're turning 6 today. Is that right? Or did I crash the wrong party?" Emily blinked for a moment, silent, then nodded slightly. Callie smiled, this time for real. "Whew. Okay, that would have been awkward." The show started with balloon animals, then silly voices, and finally a story about a dancing chicken who forgot how to cluck. As Callie twirled and tumbled, Emily started to laugh. First a sigh, then giggles, then laughter she couldn't hold back, echoing off the marble walls and making the adults in the room stop. Ryan Archer turned from his conversation and looked toward the sound. He saw his daughter laughing freely for the first time in what felt like forever. His heart skipped a beat. He looked at Callie, not as a clown, but as someone who had reached a place no one else could. Afterward, amid the applause and cheers from the crowd, Callie packed up her things with a gentle sense of peace. She had done what she came here to do. She was about to leave when she realized she left her hand puppet by the fountain inside. She stepped back in unnoticed, near the side hallway. She heard a sharp voice cutting through the air like ice. "You don't talk to him about this. Not a word. Do you hear me?" Callie froze. It was Vanessa's voice. "If you tell your dad about anything we discussed, I'll throw all your toys in the trash. And I'll smile while I do it." Emily whimpered. Callie stepped out from behind the group. "That's enough." Vanessa spun around, her face instantly turning into her public mask. "Excuse me? I heard it all," Callie said, her voice shaky but clear. "You're threatening a child. That's abuse. You're just a clown. Do you really think everyone here will believe you more than me?" Callie looked toward the crowd in the yard. She said loudly, "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to speak up. Vanessa Quinn is abusing Emily when no one is looking." The music stopped. "Vanessa Quinn is mistreating Emily when no one's watching." The music stopped. The conversation halted midway. And heads turned. Ryan hurried toward the commotion. "What the hell is going on?" Callie stood her ground. "I heard Vanessa threatening your daughter. I couldn't stay silent." Vanessa gasped. "She's lying." "Ryan, she's jealous. She's trying to ruin our engagement." Ryan stared at Callie, his face tense. "You were hired to entertain. Instead, you showed up late, dressed sloppy, and now you think you know what's best for my daughter. I know what fear looks like," Callie said softly. "And Emily is afraid of her." Ryan's voice dropped to a cold, dangerous tone. "Do you think you're some hero quietly in the corner of the room? And smiling. You're just a hired clown. You don't belong in this house. Get out." Security moved towards her. Callie didn't resist. She turned to Emily, still standing quietly in the corner, and smiled through the pain. "You're braver than you think." As she was escorted out, Emily took a step forward, but her voice was too soft. No one heard her whisper, "Don't go." Only silence heard it. The heavy oak doors of the Archer estate slammed shut behind Callie with a cold finality. She stood alone on the stone steps, the laughter and music from inside fading with each breath. Her hands trembled as she gripped the handle of her prop suitcase. The bright colors of her clown makeup, now smudged by silent tears, streaked down her cheeks like war paint in retreat. She walked slowly toward the gate, each step heavier than the last. The string lights made her outfit look even cheaper. Her heart pounded, not from shame, but from heartbreak. Back inside, the party continued as if nothing happened. Vanessa, ever the performer, channeled her charm back into cutting the cake and posing for photos. But Ryan was quieter now. His jaw clenched, his eyes fixed on the hallway where Callie had stood moments before. Something in her words still burned. Meanwhile, upstairs, a small face peeked out from behind the curtains. Emily stood at her bedroom window, her tiny fingers pressed against the glass. Her eyes searched the driveway below, scanning every face until she spotted the one she was looking for. Callie, the woman who had knelt beside her, made silly voices, let her laugh, and then stood up for her when no one else did. Emily clutched her stuffed bunny tightly. Its left foot had a faint pink heart that Callie had drawn earlier. Whispering, "This is your brave button." She held it tight, pressing gently, wishing it worked like real magic. Below, Callie had reached the gate. She paused before stepping onto the street, unable to stop herself from looking back one last time. Her eyes scanned the windows above, and there it was. A small, still shadow Emily. Callie slowly raised her hand, waving the slightest bit, her fingers trembling. Emily pressed her palm against the glass in response. No one saw it, but the stars. Callie kept walking after that. She didn't call anyone, didn't post anything online. She just went back to the small room she shared with her brother across town. The fluorescent kitchen light flickered as she walked in, and the kettle was whistling on the stove. Her brother looked up from his homework at the table. "How was the party?" Callie set her bag down, slowly sat, and let out a long-held breath. She wiped her face with a kitchen towel, watching the red, blue, and white turn to gray. "I made a little girl laugh," she said softly, "and I pissed off a lot of adults." He chuckled. "Sounds like you." Callie didn't laugh. She leaned her elbows on the table, her eyes still distant. "I got kicked out for telling the truth. Do you regret it?" She paused, thinking of Emily's eyes, the way she pressed her hand against the window like she was reaching out, like she knew. "No, I did it again." And she meant it, because there are moments in life when you have to choose to speak or stay silent, to act or fade away. Callie spoke, and even if no one believed her, even if she never got another birthday party, she chose to stand between a child and her fear. That matters, even if the only one who remembers is a 6-year-old. Ryan Archer lay awake in the vast emptiness of his bedroom. Moonlight slanted through the tall windows, grazing the edge of the bed where no one had slept in over a year. But tonight, it wasn't the silence keeping him up. It was a voice. Callie's voice. Her words echoed in his mind. I know what fear looks like, and Emily is afraid of her. He had thrown her out, humiliated her in front of everyone, but the memory of her standing there, makeup on, eyes fierce, shaking but not backing down, wouldn't leave him, just like his daughter's eyes. That night, when the party ended and the guests had left, Ryan went to check on Emily. She was curled up in her blankets, the stuffed bunny in her arms, but she wasn't asleep. She didn't even blink as he walked in. He leaned down to kiss her forehead, and she flinched. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but it happened. And now, in the darkness, it replayed in his mind. The flinch. He sat up, running his hands through his hair. The cold floor met his feet as he walked to the window, staring into the quiet night. Had he made a mistake the next morning? He watched Emily at breakfast. Vanessa was scrolling on her phone, sitting at the head of the table, dressed as impeccably as always. Emily sat with her head down, poking at her food. "Sweetie," Vanessa said curtly, "eat your eggs. They're getting cold." Emily nodded without looking up. Ryan observed the exchange. Silent. Then, he reached for the orange juice and gently poured some into Emily's glass. She looked up at him, surprised. He smiled. She didn't return it. That day, he canceled 2 meetings and worked from home. He wanted to see more. He needed to see more. And the more he watched, the more he noticed. Vanessa snapped at the staff more than he remembered. She brushed off Emily's questions or sternly corrected her for interrupting adults. Emily's questions or sternly corrected her once. He caught her yanking the remote from the child's hand and saying, "No cartoons. It's time you acted your age." Emily didn't argue. She just walked out of the room. By the end of the week, Ryan called his personal assistant. "Greg, I want someone discreet," he said, "to keep an eye on things when I'm not around, especially around Emily." Greg didn't ask why. He just said, "Understood." Ryan hated that things had come to this, that he had to investigate his own fiancée, that he had overlooked so many signs, blinded by trust, by charm, by the desire to rebuild a life that looked good from the outside. But that night, as he passed Emily's room, he stopped. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, Emily sat on the floor in her pajamas, holding the stuffed bunny she was drawing. He stepped closer, careful not to startle her. On the paper was a picture of a girl in a clown outfit holding hands with a stick figure in a bow. Both were smiling, big, bright, happy smiles. No third person in the drawing. No adults with neat hair and perfect dresses. Just the clown and the girl. Ryan felt something twist inside him. Something old, something quiet that he had ignored for too long. He stepped back into the hallway, gently closing the door and leaning against the wall. He had thrown Callie out, but clearly, she had never really left. The weekend sunlight filtered softly through the trees in the community park. It was that kind of afternoon where time slows down. Kids' laughter echoes between the benches, and the smell of popcorn drifts from a nearby cart. Ryan Archer had taken Emily out alone for the first time in months. No schedule, no security team, no fiancé hovering. Just father and daughter, a picnic blanket, and an old sketchbook Ryan had tucked into his jacket, hoping Emily might want to draw. Emily barely said a word since they arrived. She watched the kids playing on the swings, her expression unreadable. The bunny was clutched in her arms as always. Ryan was about to ask if she wanted to leave when a familiar voice rang out across the park. "Who wants a balloon that looks like a dinosaur but might end up like a spaghetti monster?" Emily's head suddenly lifted. Across the grass, surrounded by a circle of giggling kids, was a woman in bright clothes. This time, not a full clown outfit, just suspenders over a striped shirt, a heart drawn on one cheek, and a bouncy ponytail as she moved. Callie Bloom. Emily stood up without a word. Then she ran. Ryan barely registered what was happening before Emily dashed into Callie with both arms around her waist. Callie's body jerked in surprise. Her waist. Callie's body jerked. Then she looked down and froze. "Emily." She breathed. Emily pulled back enough to look at her. "I missed you." Ryan had gotten up from the bench and was walking slowly toward them, unsure of what to say or do. He half hoped Callie would walk away, just leave without a word. She didn't. Instead, she gently removed a small rainbow propeller beanie from her hair and knelt down to eye level with Emily. "I missed you too. Sunshine." The two smiled at each other like nothing else existed. Then, Callie stood up and faced Ryan. The air shifted. She wasn't smiling, wasn't startled. She looked straight into his eyes as she slowly wiped off the heart drawn on her cheek with her sleeve. "I'm not here to ask for anything," she said gently but firmly, "and I don't want your apology." Ryan swallowed, his voice catching on the guilt rising in his throat. Callie continued, "I just want to know she's safe, that someone is really seeing her. Not the scores, not the on-demand smiles, not the perfect picture, just her." Ryan's voice was hoarse as he finally spoke. "She hasn't laughed like that since you left." Callie nodded slowly. "Then maybe don't keep around the ones who hurt her longer than the ones who help her." They stood in silence. Callie didn't hand him a business card. She didn't mention the party. She didn't remind him that he had thrown her out like trash. She just gently squeezed Emily's hand for one more second, then started to turn away. Remind him that he had thrown her out. Ryan stopped her. "Callie." She turned back. His expression had softened. The walls were still there, but they were cracking. "I don't know what comes next," he said, hesitating. "But if you want to spend more time with Emily, officially, I'd be honored." Callie looked down at Emily, who was now looking at her with hopeful eyes. And that was the only reason she nodded. Not for Ryan, but for the little girl who had pressed her hand against the window like a silent promise. Callie never expected to stand at the Archer estate again. As she approached the familiar front steps, her hands clutched the straps of her worn leather bag. Her breath came out in faint puffs in the morning chill. Each brick, each window, each trimmed hedge reminded her of the day she was humiliated here, escorted out not just as an uninvited guest, but as a threat. She had rehearsed what she'd say if they stopped her. She was prepared to walk away with her dignity if they turned her away. But no one did. It was Ryan who opened the door. Today, he wasn't in a suit, just a sweater, jeans, and a face that looked almost real. They turned her away. "But no one thanks for coming," he said, his voice low but sincere. Callie nodded politely. "This is for Emily," she said gently. "And that's exactly what it is. The arrangement is simple. A few afternoons a week after school, helping with snacks, homework, and bedtime. No other obligations beyond that. No promises, no closeness." But from the moment Callie walked into that house, the walls seemed to breathe easier. The atmosphere had changed. Emily had, too. In just a few days, the girl who used to curl up like a question mark started to open up. She sang while brushing her teeth. She drew smiley faces on napkins. She ran to the door when Callie arrived. Not out of duty, but joy. The household staff noticed first. Brushing her teeth. She drew, they whispered about the difference. The way Emily skipped instead of walked now. She hugged her bunny with one arm and Callie's waist with the other. Callie brought markers, shoeboxes, rolls of paper, and glitter. Always way too much glitter. She helped Emily build cardboard castles and invisible kingdoms where the rules were kindness and everyone was allowed to laugh as loud as they wanted. Her lullabies were raspy and melodic but filled the room with warmth. And each night, she read to Emily until the girl's voice grew soft and her eyes closed amid giggles. Ryan started staying home later in the evenings. At first, he made excuses to finish work, setting up his laptop on a chair, taking calls from the home office. But soon, the excuses faded, and he just stayed. Sometimes he lingered outside Emily's door, just to listen. Callie's voice rang out like a song. He didn't know what he had missed. "You're safe now, sweetie," she whispered as Emily drifted off. She said it like she meant it, like she had said it before. Maybe to herself, maybe to someone who never heard it. One evening, Ryan passed the living room and paused. The living room, and paused. Callie and Emily sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by markers and coloring books. The light was soft, the air calm. Ryan stood quietly, unnoticed. "Is purple grass real?" Emily asked, tilting her chin. Callie answered that it is in some worlds. "Yours." Callie smiled without hesitation. "Especially mine." Ryan smiled too. Something inside him softened. Something he hadn't felt in years suddenly stirred. Another morning, he saw Callie kneeling by the shoe bench, tying Emily's shoes. She hummed softly, and Emily rested her little head on Callie's shoulder like it was the most natural thing. Ryan stood in the hallway, invisible, but in that moment, he felt more present than he had in a long time. He started making up reasons to get home earlier, a delayed meeting, a spreadsheet he could finish on his iPad, anything to share dinner, anything to watch her pour milk into Emily's cereal with steady, kind hands. They started talking more, first about Emily, how she slept better and ate more, then the little things, favorite books, old cartoons, the worst jobs they ever had, then deeper stories. Callie told him about her brother, about scraping together money for medical bills, about how life taught her to be loud when others were silent and gentle when others were loud. Ryan told her about the silence after his wife passed, the painful quiet, the pressure to pretend he was okay when he felt like exploding inside, the mistakes he made, not just as a father, but as a man afraid of getting hurt again. Callie never wavered. She never judged. She just listened fully, honestly. And that's when he realized she didn't just understand Emily, she understood him. One night, long after Emily had gone to sleep, they sat across from each other at the kitchen table. Their teacups had gone cold, their shoulders relaxed in the comfort of having nothing left to do. He looked at her, not as the woman with makeup and balloons, not as a temporary helper, but as the one who had changed the rhythm of his whole life. She didn't break down his walls. She slipped quietly, gently through the cracks, like water finding its way home. And somewhere between her laughter in the hallways and her whispered goodnights, his heart leaned toward her, not with a crash, not with fire, just with warmth, with truth, with something that whispered every time she stood to leave. Stay. Quiet. Long past midnight, the house was quiet. Long past midnight, the silence that only comes after hours of movement. But Ryan Archer was still awake. He tossed and turned for hours, the numbers on the clock blinking relentlessly in the dark, refusing to move faster. Something restless stirred in him, something more than work, more than everyday worries. He slipped out of bed, pulled on a hoodie, and padded downstairs barefoot. A soft amber light glowed under the kitchen door. He slowly pushed it open. Callie sat at the table, her back slightly hunched, a small lamp casting a golden halo around her. She was carefully sewing, patching a small tear in Emily's favorite blue sweater. She looked up, startled for a second, couldn't sleep. Callie smiled faintly and went back to the needle in her hand. Me neither. I figured I'd finish this before morning. She loves this sweater so much she doesn't want to let it go. Ryan stepped in and leaned against the counter. You don't have to do that. I know, she said gently. That's why I want to. He watched her for a moment, her fingers moving with precision. There was something calming in her work. Her presence was like warm tea and rainy evenings. Soft, comforting, never demanding space but always holding it. Can I sit? He asked. Callie looked up, surprised. Of course. They sat in silence, the only sound the thread slipping through the fabric between them. Finally, Ryan broke the silence. You're good at this. My grandma taught me. She said, sewing, cooking, how to test soup temperature without burning your tongue. Life skills. He chuckled. I like that. Life skills. Callie glanced at him. You laugh different at night. He blinked. Good or bad, real, she said, setting the sweater down. Like you're not trying to hold your breath while the world's watching. Ryan didn't answer right away. He looked at the table, then at her hands resting beside the folded sweater. You're good with her, he said after a pause. With Emily, I mean, better than anyone I've ever seen. Callie's face softened. She's a sweetheart. Ryan, she's just been asked to be quiet for too long. He nodded. I tried. I really tried. I know, she said, but trying and succeeding aren't always the same thing. Ryan let that sit. Those words weren't blame. They were truth. Truth that hurt a little, but healed a little. Too. They fell silent again. Then, from the hallway, came the patter of small feet on the hardwood floor. Emily poked her head in, hair messy, eyes blinking in the dim light. "Daddy." Ryan stood up. "Sweetie, what is it? I had a dream," she mumbled, stepping forward and burying her face in his sweater. "Can't sleep." Callie reached out gently. "Want to sit with us for a minute?" Emily nodded and climbed into her lap like it was the most natural thing in the world. Callie held her close, her thumb drawing small circles on her back. A few minutes later, Emily lifted her head and whispered, "I drew you a picture." "Did you?" Ryan asked. She nodded, pulling a folded paper from her pajama pocket. He unfolded it slowly. Bright, uneven crayon colors, but full of feeling. 3 figures holding hands. A tall man, a woman with red hair, and a little girl in the middle. A big red heart above their heads. Ryan looked at it, his breath catching in his chest. Ryan looked at it, his breath catching in. Callie looked away, her cheeks flushing. "She asked me what love looks like. I told her. It looks like having someone who stays." Ryan glanced at her, her soft face in the kitchen light. "Do you think that's us?" Callie met his eyes. "I think that's what she hopes." He folded the drawing carefully and set it on the table. "It's beautiful," he said gently. "All of it." Callie smiled. "She's got a real eye for storytelling." Ryan looked down at Emily, now dozing lightly on Callie's shoulder, and something in his heart whispered again, "You, too." The Archer house grew quieter in the weeks that followed. Ryan came home earlier. He smiled more. Emily laughed freely. And Callie was no longer just a guest, not even just hired help. Now she was simply part of the rhythm. But not everyone was happy. Vanessa Quinn, who once ruled the hallways with her echoing heels like a gong, now grew colder and sharper. Her smiles turned forced, her touches more controlling. Ryan noticed her subtle corrections, the narrowed looks she gave Callie when no one was watching, and how Emily tensed when Vanessa entered a room. That evening, Ryan returned home unannounced after a postponed board meeting. He entered through the side door, expecting quiet. Instead, he heard shouting. He moved toward the living room, steps slow and careful. The voices grew clearer. "Do you think you can replace me?" Vanessa hissed. "Waltzing around this house like you belong here. You're nothing. It's pathetic that we had to hire someone with face paint and old sweaters." Then another voice rose, shaky but firm. "Callie, I'm not trying to replace anyone. I'm just trying to keep Emily safe." Ryan reached the hallway just in time to hear the sharp sound of something. Vanessa's voice turned venomous. "Do you think you're a mom now? Touch her again and I swear." Then a scream. Emily's. Ryan burst in. Vanessa's hand gripped Emily's hair, pulling the child back as Callie reached out to shield her. "Let her go," Ryan said, his voice sharp as a knife. Vanessa froze. Callie didn't move. Emily, eyes wide and trembling, whimpered, "Daddy." Ryan stepped into the room slowly, calmly, like a man who had made a decision. "No need to do that." Vanessa blinked. "Ryan," he said, eyes still on Vanessa. "I asked if she could replace you, but the point is, she doesn't have to." Vanessa blinked. "Ryan." I raised my hand, because she doesn't pretend to be someone she's not. "You do." Silence. "You've played your part well. The perfect partner, the bright smile, the charity events. But now I see you, all of you." Vanessa's voice choked. "You have no idea what you're saying." Ryan stepped closer. "No, but I know what I've seen, and someone looked into the rest." Her face paled. The missing funds from the Archer Foundation Scholarship Fund, faked invoices, the undeclared partnerships in your name. She opened her mouth, but said nothing. Ryan turned toward the hallway. "They'll be here soon." One last, a look full of hate. "The police." Vanessa's face twisted, then hardened into something unrecognizable. She looked at Callie one last time, a look full of hate, then bolted for the door, only to meet the officers as they entered the foyer. Ryan didn't follow. Instead, he knelt down. Emily was still shaking. Callie knelt beside her, holding the child close. Ryan reached out. "I'm here," he whispered. Emily turned slowly, uncertain. She looked right into her father's face, really looked, then threw herself into his arms. He held her tight, held her like he hadn't in months. Callie leaned back slightly, tears in her eyes. Then Emily turned to her and whispered something small and brave. "I'm not scared anymore. Callie smiled, and this time she stayed. The small table, the dim lights, and no guests, no glittering chandeliers, no white-gloved waiters, no clinking champagne glasses, just the warm glow of candles reflecting golden shadows on the worn wooden table. 3 mismatched plates and simple dishes that Callie had prepared herself, her grandma's rosemary chicken, Emily's favorite mashed potatoes with extra butter and soft bread still warm from the oven, steam rising gently in the quiet space. This wasn't a traditional celebration. No formal attire, no photographer, no speeches, just Ryan, Callie, and Emily. 3 chairs, a quiet evening, and something unspoken lingering in the air between them, warm and light as the glow. Emily giggled as she reached for a roll, her small hand brushing Callie's. "This place is way better than those fancy restaurants," she said, her face beaming with the honesty only a kid can have. Callie chuckled softly. "I'll take that as a 5-star review." Ryan watched them for a long moment, his fork hovering over his plate, unmoving. Callie's laughter filled the room like music, light and natural. Emily smiled at her, a light that only showed when she felt truly safe. He set his fork down. Then, slowly, he reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box, as if what he was about to do could change the world. Callie's eyes widened. She didn't move. He didn't open it right away. His fingers rested on the lid, hesitant, but his eyes never left her. "I remember the first time I saw you," Ryan said, his voice deeper than usual. "You had on a rainbow wig and painted your nose." Callie blushed and laughed awkwardly. "That's not my best look." She smiled. "You looked like chaos wrapped in glitter. Then you went quiet. But you were the only one who really saw Emily. Not the idea of her, not the child she was expected to be. Just her. You didn't tell her to smile. You didn't try to fix her. You just let her be." Callie blinked, her throat tightening. "You didn't just make her laugh," he continued. "You gave her back her voice. And you gave me back mine." He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring, unadorned, sincere. "I'm not looking for perfect," he said. "I don't need the show or the polish. I want the truth. I want the one who shows up when it's hard, the one who believes in a little girl when no one else does." His voice trembled. "Callie, you were never just the clown we hired. You're the woman my heart chose." Callie covered her mouth with one hand, the other trembling in her lap. Her eyes glistened with tears. Then, before she could find the words, Emily reached across the table and gently tugged Ryan's sleeve. "I choose her, too," she whispered. "Forever." Callie's tears spilled over, but her smile stayed bright. "Oh, I guess I'm outnumbered." Ryan reached across the table and took her hand. She took his. And in that moment, no stage lights, no audience, no one watching, just a small family bound not by blood, but by choice, by courage, by love that had been tested, doubted, and still refused to be silent. Because sometimes home isn't where you're from. It's where you build it together with the ones who stand up for you, even when no one else will. Sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to stand for what's right, even when no one else believes them. Callie was never just a clown. She was the light in the dark, a voice when a child had none, and a heart that healed not just a little girl, but a whole family. This story reminds us that life often brings the unexpected to teach us the most meaningful lessons. Behind every costume, every assumption, and every fear, there's a human story longing to be seen. The single dad who thought he had everything under control discovered that healing doesn't come from perfection. It comes from connection. And the woman behind the clown makeup, she turned out to be exactly who his broken heart and his daughter needed. If this story moved you, take a moment to support our main characters with your thoughts in the comments. What would you say to someone who hides behind humor to mask their pain? And what advice would you give to a father learning how to open his heart again? Should he take the risk to love again? Should she stay and believe she's worthy of being loved? Not just for a role she plays, but for who she is. Your words might just be what they need to hear. And if you'd love to experience more touching stories like this, filled with warmth, second chances, and soul-deep connections, don't forget to subscribe to Touching Tales Hub, because the next story might just be the one that changes your life.